You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, welcome to another awesome episode of Ask Drone U. My name is Paul and I have a very special guest for you today. In fact, it's even his birthday today. Please help me welcome and give him a happy birthday, Mr. Vic Moss. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Everyone knows I look up to you. You are a thought leader in the Drone U community. In fact, if you ask a question in the Drone U community, chances are Vic is going to be responding to you. Because he always wants to ensure that the right information gets out there. So if you remember about a week or two ago, we had someone on the show talking about what's the best way I can become an advocate for the industry? How can I help, stop these terrible proposed laws and these, crazy righteous lawmakers? Well, luckily today we've got Vic Moss, who has already been doing this for quite some time in the Denver, Colorado area. He has been a huge advocate for the industry. And Vic, that's why I wanted to bring you on and really ask you, how can someone become a part of the drone industry as an advocate? What are the first few steps to become a good advocate of the industry?
First and foremost, you got to know what you're talking about. You have to understand what the laws are, what you can and can't do as a locality, as a political subdivision is the official term there. That's anything that's not federal, basically, is a political subdivision. So state, local, county, all that stuff is all political subdivisions. It's a fun word. But you got to understand what you need to know is what the laws actually mean. You can't confuse Cosby with the airspace limits that you're allowed to have. And you have to understand what federal preemption is, what the supremacy clause of Article 6 of the United States Constitution is, and all that good stuff. And that's just stuff you pick up. It's actually pretty easy once you understand what you're doing.
So for those who don't know what Article 6 of the Constitution is, would you like to tell us?
It basically means that federal law preempts state law. The laws of the land overrule the laws of the state.
Gotcha. Now, why is it important for someone to not mix airspace rights and the Cosby case together? What are you talking about? What are you seeing?
Cosby was 1940-something. I can't remember. Chicken farmer in Texas, I believe, sued the federal government because the jets and airplanes for the Army Air Corps or the early Air Force, depending on which time it was, I can't remember, were constantly taking off over his chicken coop and messing up his egg schedule. And so he sued and he won. And the judge said that the United States took 83 feet, I believe is the number, of his airspace away from him. So it has more to do with the taking than the actual airspace use. But a few different other rulings came out of that as well. But a lot of people then say that 83 feet is what you're allowed to use and you can't fly below that. And that's incorrect. That basically is what was specifically for Mr. Cosby in that particular case. And the United States actually had to pay him for his airspace.
Yes, I see that here. It says a low-flying military aircraft terrified Cosby's chickens so much that the chickens stopped laying eggs and some ran into the sides of the chicken coop, leading to their death. I just thought I would emphasize the death.
And they had fresh chicken for dinner that night, but still, no more eggs.
It said that he lost 150 chickens and had to stop farming. It looks like the feds offered $2,000 to Cosby for an air easement, but Cosby considered it too little and then sued the government for compensation under the Fifth Amendment's takings clause and won in the lower courts.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing that came out of that with the federal, actually I think it went to the Supreme Court, was that the old concept of that you own everything from the air to below, it just didn't have any use in the modern world, because then you couldn't have airplanes flying over, helicopters flying over, that kind of thing, even at 20 some odd thousand feet, whatever commercial jetliners fly at. So it decided, the Supreme Court decided that didn't have any real use in the modern world.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen some people use this case as a reason to that they can fly in controlled airspace as long as it's not over 83 or 84 feet. I've seen people use this case for that, and I'm like,
no, it's dead wrong.
I don't think that is. Well, anyway, so getting things right is the first point. Obviously, knowing a little bit about case law is probably good. And guys, if you do want to look up case law, you don't have to break the bank on LexisNexis. Just go to the local university and go to their law library, and you can normally look stuff up for free. So,
or just Google anything, and it pops up. It's great.
Yeah. Or that, or the Google, whatever. Well, anyway, before we run out of time with Vic, since it is his birthday, anyway, since we're here with Vic, what is the best way to go about handling preemptions? Should I go to someone like whoever the bill sponsor is, maybe, and provide them with a preemption? I mean, it seems like there's got to be a proper way to kind of go about this.
Usually, you want to contact whoever the sponsor is, the co-sponsors are. You want to get involved in the process as soon as you possibly can. Keep an eye on your own legislature. Every state has its own website, and you can just Google, you go to the website, and there's a search engine at the top almost always, and you just put down their current legislative session, and it'll come up usually both House and Senate. You just do keywords like drone or UAS or airspace, all that good stuff, and contact them directly. Odds are they want to know. They want to, you're one of their constituents. You're one of the people that put them there, so they want to listen to you. Usually, not always, but you also want to get a coalition together, and not just pilots, not just photographers and videographers. You want to get sheriffs. You want to get private investigators. You want to get people in the insurance industry, people in the lawyers, get lawyers involved. Anybody who has any vested interest in the use of UAVs or drones, they're going to want to know what's going on, and they're going to want to have a say in it as well. And the more broad your coalition, the better you're going to look anyway.
Definitely. No, I think that's a very good point. In fact, the local police reached out to us on this recent bill that we talked about to try to do the same thing. So I think it's a really good point to make to those of you who are listening and want to become an advocate for the industry itself. Right. Vic, now have you run across anything with privacy, privacy concerns? What do you normally say to that? And how should other drone pilots who want to be advocates, what should they be saying?
Privacy is, it's not really black and white, but it's not really all that gray either. When it comes to privacy, you have what's called a public thoroughfare issue. And there's been a couple of cases that say that you really don't have any privacy from the air. The airspace above your property is a public thoroughfare. Cirolo v. California, and I think Riley v. Florida, and a couple others are kind of, those are search and seizure related, but it's still a public thoroughfare issue. It's no different than driving down your street. The street in front of your house is a public thoroughfare. And so anything in the airspace, you do not have what's called reasonable expectation of privacy. So
I've heard that before. The reasonable right of expectation, I believe,
expectation of privacy.
Yeah, that is what I've heard as well. And it's just like saying, someone said it to me, like, well, you go in the shower, hopefully, and put on clothes, hopefully. To go outside, every day. It's like you're getting ready to be seen. So once you are outside, you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy. That's kind of how it's been explained to me, and how I've always understood it.
On the inside of your home, there was, I want to say about 3 or 4 months ago, there's a photographer in New York City who lived in a high rise, and he shot pictures of his neighbors across the street in their open windows. His neighbors sued them, and they lost because their drapes are open, they're visible from the outside, and they don't have reasonable expectation of privacy in your own home if your drapes are open.
So essentially, if you're making the opportunity available to people to peep on you, you can't get mad at them for peeping on you.
As long as you're on a public thoroughfare or something that is not, like, let's say you've got a bathroom window on the side of your house and you have a 6-foot privacy fence, and you're you can't see unless you're peeking over the fence line. That is reasonable expectation of privacy. But your front yard, a high rise in New York, apparently, those do not have reasonable expectation of privacy if your drapes are open.
Gotcha. So let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about pilots' intentions. Now, I know this is a big thing, something that you harp on a lot. It's when someone is writing the ability to take off and land, because, correct me if I'm wrong here, but no one can control the airspace except the FAA.
Right.
But counties, states, city governments, they can inhibit you from taking off and landing in certain areas, but they cannot inhibit you from flying over anything.
Right. Yeah. Now, states and cities, a lot of cities do this, and a lot of counties do this. States do it as well. But if you're in property, on property, not in, but on, standing on property, they control a park, government buildings, and the land around government buildings, like your state capitol, courthouses, that kind of thing, prisons. They can say, you may not stand here and operate a UAV. You can't take off, you can't land, you can't operate while you're standing there. And they're well within their rights to do that, because that's a land use issue. It's no different than leash law, no different than having no open alcohol containers on your park property. I mean, that's the same kind of thing like that. They're also allowed to permit you, like if they have a state park or a city park, let's use city parks, they can actually require you to have a permit to fly your drone while on their property. So those are all well within the rights of a city or state. It's when they do things like what Orlando tried to do, like what Utah's trying to do, right? Actually, Orlando did do, is you can't fly within 500 feet of a courthouse. It's like, well, you can't do that. You can't tell somebody you can't fly within a certain amount of distance of a landmark.
Gotcha. So that's all that Orlando did, because I thought it went a little bit deeper. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what happened in Orlando, Vic, would you mind explaining exactly what did happen?
It's a little confusing, actually. I watched the city council meeting online, and actually was communicating back and forth with somebody who was there at the same time. And when it was over, both he and I thought that they had passed the ordinance back to their city attorney so they could look at it again, but they had not. It was just one of those quick slam bam things that they happen in the city council building. It's like, oh, okay, well, found out about an hour or two later that no, they had passed it. It's a little squirrely. They still haven't actually published the language, how it's going to work. So it's still a little bit unsure exactly how that's going to happen, but they've done things like you can't fly over a open air assembly, things like that, again, where they're trying to control the NAS. They did have some exemptions in there, but I'm not sure which ones are going to make the cut. It's kind of weird. They never actually put out the way it's worded as how they voted on it. They just crossed out a bunch of stuff, and then they voted on it, and then they're going to put out how they voted. It's weird. I don't understand how they did that, but I'm not a politician, so.
Yeah, very interesting. So let's talk for a second about intention. Why do you think intention is so important when writing proposed laws or when lawmaking?
Because when it comes to UAV, and it's actually intent of the pilot, is very, very important. And actually, in the state and laws fact sheet, or the state and local law fact sheet that the FAA put out in December of 2015, it says you can do things like write laws that prohibit voyeurism with a UAV. So if you can prohibit intent, then you have to prove intent. And if you're flying around at night and you're hovering outside somebody's bedroom or bathroom, I think the intent is pretty clear in a situation like that. So
they were clearly cleaning the windows.
Clearly cleaning the windows. Blowing all the dust off the windows. Yeah, no, I don't think that would fly. If you do something like that, I hope you do get caught, because it's stupid. And so they're allowed to add UAV to certain laws, like intent, like harassment. If you have a court order to stay away from somebody and you fly around them with the UAV, they can add things like that to existing laws, and they're perfectly within the purview of their political subdivision. Yeah, they can do that, no problem, and they should. They should. If they want to do that, go for it. It makes their constituents feel like they're doing something, and it makes them feel like they're doing something as well.
I like how you say it makes them feel like they're doing something.
Well, they are doing something. Okay,
Yeah.
let's say
Well,
that.
I agree with you on the intent, and I wanted to see your reaction when talking about the window cleaning, which was great. But do you think there's anything else? We've talked a little bit about intention. We've talked a little bit about preemption.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about what these kind of political subdivisions can do? I mean, and what they can't do? Are we missing anything here, Vic?
You really want to look at the FAA actually just redid their UAS site, their pages, and they added one called resources. So if you go to faa.gov/UAS/resources, it kind of bothers me. I've got all these memorized, but they have a lot of really good resources there. Everything, actually, I've got it up right now. You can have regulation and policies, law enforcement, which is a big one, what they can and can't do under law enforcement. Sightings report, FOIA responses, that kind of thing on the resources page. So it's kind of nice that they have all that.
What's that page again? FAA?
It's faa.gov/UAS/resources. You can just go to .gov/UAS, and resources is one of the little tags on the left side of the page. You should have that bookmarked anyway.
Yeah, thanks. I see it now. FOIA responses. It would
I haven't dug into that, so I don't know exactly what's under the FOIA, but could be interesting.
This could be a gold mine of information.
Could be, but probably isn't.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, again.
But things like, and you can do things, let's see, U.S. regulation and policy. That's a really good one. You got all kinds of, if you click on that one, you got all kinds of different things you can look at. And one of them is under guidance is the state and local regulations of unmanned aerial systems PDF. And so I would strongly suggest printing that sucker out, or at least putting it on your computer. That's where awesome. It really gives some great, definitely some references, some court cases that the FAA has done that is kind of backs up what they're saying, like what you can and can't do. One of the things I really like about how they word it is, if you notice what it says is it goes through a couple different pages, and then at the middle of page 3, I believe it is. Let's see, where is it? State and local regulations. That's the one I wanted. Middle of page 3, it says examples of state and local laws for which consultation with the FAA is recommended. When the FAA or any federal agency uses the word recommended, they're being nice. It's really not a recommendation. It's, hey, you guys really need to talk to us about this first.
Which is interesting because it says requirement for police to obtain a warrant prior to using UAS for surveillance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's one of the things it says is the states can limit what law enforcement can do with the drone. I would strongly advise them, and I do strongly advise them, that they be careful how they write that, because then they can do things like prohibit use in search and rescue, prohibit use in accident reconstruction, because you are technically gathering evidence in an accident reconstruction, and you don't want to wait around to get a judge to say it's okay. Say, here's your warrant. You go ahead and gather information, because you can use that information that you've gathered without a warrant to prosecute whoever was, let's say it's a fatal hit and run. Then you're looking at vehicular manslaughter or whatever charges, and a UAV can be used as accident scene investigation. But if you worded it wrong in the law as a state, then they cannot use that information in the trial. So states have to be very careful how they word that. Getting warrants and things like that for surveillance is fine, that kind of thing. But yeah, having law enforcement using drones is awesome, obviously. So they have to be careful how they word that. They also say you can put in your state law that you can't arm a drone. So I'm okay with that too. Don't put guns on your drones, guys.
Yeah, I just saw a picture of what is going on in the Middle East with them.
Yeah. What's his name? The guy who put the drone or put the 45 on, then he put the flamethrower on.
Oh yeah, I don't even know his name.
But yeah, it's like, really, there's so many different opportunities during the process of doing that to stop and say, maybe this isn't a good idea. When those little voices in your head say this might not be a good idea, it might be a good time to listen to them.
I think the rule is if you're questioning anything about the project or the project is questionable, it's probably not a good idea.
Run it by somebody first, and not your dad.
Yeah. Well, Vic, no, I really appreciate having you on the show and going over these important points on intention and privacy. I know you wrote an article. Is there any other good place where we can find any information? Or I just want to make sure we don't miss anything here.
I think, the article I wrote, which is on medium.com, I'm sure you'll put a link up there to it. Just go to medium.com and search my name, Vic Moss, and you'll have a couple different articles that I've written lately. One is like geared, it's basically the same article, but the first one is geared more towards people who are trying to talk to their legislators, what to do, get a group together, that kind of thing, some examples in there. And then the second one I wrote, because so many people were forwarding that on to their legislators, is like, why don't I just write an article that's geared towards the legislators, telling them what they can and can't do, or suggesting what they can and can't do. I'm not a lawyer. I don't dispense legal law. I've got an art degree. I don't have a law degree. So, but I've learned enough just by osmosis, by being there and doing things that, I've got a pretty decent knowledge of what you can and can't do.
I think you do, and I think you're a huge voice in the community. Sorry, I'm sitting here and making sure that we have the link in the show notes because I want to make sure that people have access to it. But you do a lot, Vic, and I think what you do is extremely well intentioned, and you have such educated responses. That's why I think it's important for everyone who's listening to the show to really hear what Vic is saying right now. From the beginning to the end. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to be aware of. And starting a coalition and getting a group behind you is just imperative.
It's huge. And be nice. I mean, it's as tempting as it is. And I've been cussed out by legislators. No, I'm not going to mention his name. Never mind. Anyway, but he lives in Ashland, Missouri. I will say that. They have an awesome sheriff there, though. He's a great guy, but one of their councilmen is not. Let's just say that. He cussed me out. He accused me of all kinds of nasty things. But anyway, be nice to them. They're not there to piss people off. They're not there to get people mad. It's happened because they don't understand what they're trying to do. And if you're nice to them, odds are great that they'll be nice to you, especially at the state and local level. I've been ignored by lots of different people at the local level, like in Hempstead, New York. There's a Hempstead, is it New York or? Yeah, I think it's Hempstead, New York, a couple cities in Massachusetts, Florida, things like that. But they just ignore everybody unless you voted for them. That's just how it is.
That's unfortunate. Is there any case law that we should be aware of that is maybe helping the drone industry and kind of fighting back about the preemption to help set the precedent?
There's lots of precedent case law as far as federal preemption. I don't have any off the top of my head, but in that fact sheet that the FAA put out, where you can find underneath the resources tab, there are some case laws in there, and I think some of them do deal with federal preemption. The Aviation Act of 1958, Federal Aviation Act of 1958, which then established the FAA. That's what kind of solidified the FAA's sole control of the NAS. It was something to do. It also started out, I think, 1926 is when the federal sovereignty of the airspace was established. And then it was just solidified with future bills and things that the Congress does at the national level.
So I guess the case that I was looking at was Singer versus the town of Newton.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Singer. He and I have talked a little bit. Great guy. He is suing... this is funny, actually, the town of Hempstead, New York. And because they passed a horrific law, they're one of the towns that just flat out ignored me, ignored AMA, ignored people who lived there, and said, we're going to pass this law, and that's just how it is, and you guys just suck it up. Mr. Singer, Dr. Singer, he's a doctor, and he is trying to develop a way for drones to send medicine out. A delivery system with drones. And so he cannot do that now in Hempstead, New York. And so he's he filed a suit in Massachusetts Court of Law. I think it was the federal court, Massachusetts District. And we'll see where that goes. I'm really hoping that Hempstead fights it. Because then when they lose, and just about everybody in the community is pretty sure they will, we'll have precedent. My fear is that they'll go, we screwed up, let's just drop the law and go on our way, and then we still won't have precedent yet. But if Dr. Singer wins, we'll have precedent. And what's really funny, I'm glad you brought up Hempstead, is under the and this is in my article too, under the example of those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it. On the FAA state fact sheet, the American Airlines versus Town of Hempstead in 1968 is one of the court cases that proves that the FAA can control the airspace. So it's kind of funny that the town they're very close to becoming another footnote, because they're not even reading their own case history, or that they didn't bother reading the FAA action. And I know they got it because I sent it to them along with numerous other people in the industry. Sent these to the mayor, sent them to all the council members, and sent them to the town attorney. It's like, here, read this. You guys can't do it. Read it. They did it anyway, even though they're mentioned verbatim.
It blows my mind how we elect people to represent us and they do the exact opposite. So anyway, that's a lesson for all of you youngins. If you want to get in politics, do it for the only the right reasons. But Vic, I just want to say happy birthday, my friend.
Sure, thank you very much.
Again. And guys, if you haven't checked out Vic's class on aerial photography, I mean, he goes over theory, the practical aspect. There's so much in his class. You've got to check it out. It is free to Drone U members. If you're not a Drone U member, become a Drone U member today, and you can check it out. But also, I hear this little bird, Vic. And this little bird tells me that you're doing some editing classes at the fly-in. Is that true?
That's the theory. As soon as we get the schedule out, that'd be awesome. Maybe even do a little light painting at night. Maybe get Lone Cube on board. We'll see. We'll see. That's still in the planning stage. It's going to be exciting. Yeah, definitely want to do the editing class, because it's so much easier to edit when you're in person. You know, then you can do stuff on the computer and say, stop, wait, why did you do that? How did you do that? And I can stop and we can go back, and it looks like the place we're going to have it, I'm not going to say anything other than that, is going to be some dynamite facilities.
I am excited as well, my friend. I am excited as well. And if you guys have been paying attention to the show, you might be able to figure out where the fly-in is going to take place. If you remember my last intern, what school did he graduate from? Okay,
so now you're just going to spill the beans. But
no, I'm not. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that question.
Did you ask Rob if you could say that yet?
No. But anyway, Vic, thank you again for coming on the show. And guys, check out his class. If you have questions for Vic, he's in the Drone U community. But that's going to do it for us today. Vic, thank you again, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's always fun. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Make sure if you have a question, you go to askdroneu.com and upload that question. But we'll see you next time, guys.